Hey Eurovision fam, it's Alesia Michelle. Today I'm really excited because I am going to be talking about a topic that always comes up when Eurovision season rolls around, and it's talking about hype. But not just any hype, overhyped songs. Hey. Hey, what, Eurovision 2022. I got a new video. Alesia Michelle, I'm ready to go. Are you ready? Eurovision fam, yeah. Are you ready for the show? Now, before we get into this video, I think it's really important for us, to define what we mean when we're talking about hype and something that is overhyped. Because I'm not going to lie, some of you I think are a little bit confused. I think you're a little bit confused about what these words actually mean. Hype, extravagant or intensive publicity or promotion. In an example, she relied on hype and headlines to stoke up interest in her music. How applicable. But let's talk about hype as a verb. Promote or publicize a product or idea intensively, often exaggerating its importance or benefits. Very insightful. Now we're going to look at overhype in particular. To make exaggerated claims about a product, idea, event, publicize or promote excessively. The definitions are somewhat the same to hype and to overhype, but to overhype means to do it a little bit more. Okay, so here's one thing I want to knock out before we even get into this video. When people say Italy was overhyped last year, they are incorrect. Why are they incorrect? Because I think when we talk about hype at the Eurovision Song Contest and we talk about overhype, I want to be very clear that we're defining something that is somewhat based like excessively, and it would have to be exaggerating. It would have to be exaggerating it. So to say that Italy last year was being overhyped and it won would be incorrect because the song won. So that would tell us, and I would even say that to say that France or Switzerland was overhyped might be a little bit of an exaggeration. I think if a song comes top 5, top 3, or clearly wins the contest, we can't necessarily say that the song was overhyped because that hype ended up being real. That hype was rooted in fact. The entries won. I would say we could probably say that Malta perhaps was overhyped last year at Eurovision because it didn't come top 5, it didn't come top 3, it still did very well. It still came top 10, which is an achievement completely, especially if we look at the caliber of contests that we had last year. But it did not win. So saying that Malta was overhyped, I will say for the purposes of this video and this argument, we could say that Malta last year was overhyped. To say that Italy was overhyped last year would not be correct because it won. Essentially, when I asked the question on Twitter, like, what songs do you think are being overhyped? Essentially, what I am asking is, what songs do you think everyone's going crazy for that ultimately may not qualify, ultimately may not win, ultimately may not come top 10, and for the purposes of this argument, top 5. We'll say top 5, okay? So to break this down, I asked the question on Twitter, and I got so many responses. Honestly, I did not think I was going to get as many responses as I did, but thank y'all so much. And if you haven't connected with me on Twitter, you definitely want to connect with me on Twitter. So anyone who's watching this video, buckle up, because these aren't necessarily the entries that I think are overhyped. These are the entries that Twitter thinks are overhyped. And as my proof, I'm going to have up here a scroll so that you can see what came in. Let's start off with the countries that were mentioned, but that weren't the top 3. So we've got 3 countries that Twitter pretty much felt like were overhyped. And you might go, well, Alesia, how do you know? Like, how did you know, like, how many responses one had? I literally sat here and counted. At the bottom, Romania was mentioned, but it wasn't mentioned that much. So I'm just going to throw it out there. I wouldn't even say that Romania is being hyped at all. I think Romanians like the song. I think they're happy with their entry, and that's a good thing. Next up that I heard mentioned was Montenegro. I didn't see Montenegro a lot because, to be honest, I don't think a ton of people are really talking about Montenegro right now. I don't think that Montenegro really has a ton of hype. I don't know if that's really fair to say, but I did see someone mentioned it, so I'm just mentioning it here. All right, and then we had France. There were about 3 or 4 tweets where people were saying that France was overhyped, and I mean, I would just say I think people are happy with what France is delivering this year. I think people have been wanting France to give us something like this. And I think I, for one, have been kind of looking for France to give us something like this. And I don't think that I'm overhyping it because I don't know if I necessarily feel like this is going to be our winner this year, but I think that France is going to do fairly well this year. I think they're giving us a good entry. So we'll see if France really was overhyped. But my itch is telling me that France is going to do pretty well this year. I don't think they're going to do as well as they did last year. But I wouldn't be surprised to see France top 10, top 15. Top 15 might be too low for me. I think France deserves to be top 10 this year. We'll see. Next up being mentioned was Australia. Australia had probably like 4 or 5 mentions. And to be honest, I feel like Australia might be getting a little bit of hate this year. I don't know if I've really seen a ton of hype for this entry, if I'm being honest. I think that a lot of people wanted other things to win in that national selection. So maybe the people who are saying that it's overhyped really might be kind of hating on the entry because they would have rather seen something else win. I don't know, because I just don't think I'm seeing a ton of hype for Australia. I think that there's a lot of people who feel sort of lukewarm about the entry. I'm not one of those people. I'm actually really liking the song. I'm liking listening to it. I'm really liking the studio cut, and I'm curious to see how they transform to the Eurovision stage. Next up was Lithuania. And might I just say, all of these things that I have mentioned so far, really minimal mentions. So don't get too deep about it. But next up was Lithuania. There were about 5 or 6 people who commented saying that Lithuania was being overhyped. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't know if I'm seeing a ton of overhype for Lithuania. Again, I think that there's a lot of people in Lithuania who really, really like the entry and are feeling the song. I'm not gonna lie, I really like what Lithuania is serving this year. I think that Lithuania has one of the few really quality, different entries that we have this year. I think sonically it's very different. I also think that it's slightly risky, but I also think that it's being delivered in a really adult and quality package. But I can understand if some people don't like it. You know, it's interesting when you ask questions about songs being hyped or overhyped. I think sometimes you get people who are just like, you get the people who are just like, well, I don't like this song. And just off of them seeing one person who likes it, they're like, okay, it's overhyped. Because I don't know if I'm necessarily seeing a ton of overhype for Lithuania. And if anything, I think that people have kind of been quiet on Lithuania for a while. I think people have been getting all of these different and new entries, but I'm curious to see if once we get all of our songs and all of the songs are sort of finalized, I wonder if people then begin to start sort of forming their alliances and figuring out what songs they really want to see do really well at Eurovision. So maybe some of that hype for Lithuania will begin to reemerge again. Next up, and I'm not gonna lie, I was surprised to see this one mentioned, the Netherlands. Yes, there were some people who sort of felt like the Netherlands is being overhyped this year. If anything, I think that the Netherlands is kind of floating a little bit under the radar. I think even a lot of Dutch Eurovision fans are sort of discounting their entry a little bit. I think they're a little bit nervous because the song is in Dutch. But yeah, apparently some of you think that the Netherlands is being overhyped. I don't know how I feel about that, Because I think the Netherlands could be looking at a top 10 finish. I'm not going to lie. After that live performance, overhyped this year, I don't know. We'll see. Next up, and they haven't even picked their song yet, but Sweden. Yep, people mentioned Sweden as being overhyped this year, and Sweden hasn't even selected their representative. But I do think that most of the people who were commenting on Sweden were sort of like thinking that Cornelia in particular was being overhyped. And I don't know, y'all. This year is an interesting Eurovision year, and I do think if Sweden were to select Cornelia, they probably would be in some winner potential conversations. I don't know if Sweden would win with Cornelia. I don't think I'm saying that, but I do think that Sweden would be sending something that's a winning package, and a winning package that could get some people at home to vote, and a winning package that will definitely garner some juries. But according to you all, Sweden is already being overhyped, even though they don't have a song yet. Next up, we have Serbia. Actually, Serbia tied with Sweden when it comes to being overhyped. And, I just think that what we're seeing is Serbian Eurovision fans being Serbian Eurovision fans. I did a TikTok video, and I've had this whole TikTok series where basically I'm like, this country be like at Eurovision. It's for fun. I find trending sounds that seem to match with particular countries, and I just think it's a really fun series to do. And look, I don't fault any country for hyping themselves up. And I think if people feel like Serbia might be overhyping themselves, okay, maybe. But, Serbia always kind of hypes themselves up. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But I will say, I think with Serbia's entry this year, it's really interesting. And I'm curious to see if that hype and that love for the song translates beyond Serbia. Yes, it was trending and people were watching the music video, but as we know with Eurovision, video views don't necessarily dictate the winner of the contest. There's a lot of other factors. And then I also would say, just because someone's really into something for the virality of it or for the TikTok-ness of it, doesn't necessarily translate into a Eurovision winner. We know that already. So I'm really curious to see if Serbia truly is overhyped, or if that hype is going to be real. Are we expecting a top 10 finish? Are we expecting a top 5 finish from Serbia? We shall see. And next up is Ukraine. Yes, I think people are thinking, and I do think that the Eurovision fan base is feeling like because of sort of the situation with Ukraine, there's going to be tons of people who just want to show their love and support on the jury side. And, from televoters at home just wanting to give Ukraine sort of that encouragement and show them some love. And I think that there are actually some people who really, really feel passionately about Ukraine's song being the best this year. We all know I don't think that Ukraine's song is the best this year. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think that it is the best song this year. But here's the thing. If Ukraine ends up winning or coming top 3, is that hype not real? You know what I'm saying? Next up, in countries that are overhyped, we have Albania, which I was kind of surprised to see mentioned. I mean, year after year, I think Albania, if anything, sort of gets the short end of the stick and sometimes doesn't get the love that they need. And Albania has actually tried something a little bit new this year. Yes, they've sent singing women before, but we've not really gotten a bop from Albania lately. It's been a really long time since we've gotten a bop from Albania, so I think they're mixing it up, and I think people are just excited that they've mixed it up. But what I saw a lot in the comments was people saying that after the revamp, how anyone could be hyping up Albania. Crazy. That's what people have basically been saying. So we'll see. I mean, I think that Albania could be seeing one of their best results this year. I really do. But we'll see what happens in Turin. Next up, we have Norway, which honestly, I was not surprised to see Norway here. Now, I will say, I don't think I've heard a lot of people talking about Norway lately. If I'm being honest, I think that Norway, after Subwoofer won, I think that Subwoofer was kind of the person that most of us, or the group that most of us thought were going to probably win MGP. So I think that there was something a little bit about MGP, and I think that this is also a reason why MGP might actually want to reconsider their national selection format, because I do think it just felt like Subwoofer was going to win. It felt like they were most likely going to win. So to have to watch week by week by week a show where you kind of feel like you know who's going to win, and then to have them actually win, it's just a little bit, I think, we watched this whole thing just to see, what was the point of watching this whole thing if we knew who was kind of going to win all along? I should also say, I think with Norway's entry, I think people are kind of looking at it and being like, this is silly. They're talking about give a wolf a banana. How can anyone be talking about how great this is? This isn't Masterpiece. It's about a wolf and a banana. So I could see why some people are thinking that Norway is being overhyped. But to be honest, I don't think anyone's saying that Norway's going to win Eurovision. I don't think that there's a whole boatload of people like, oh, Norway's about to win Eurovision 2022. So with that said, I don't know if we can really say that it's being overhyped. Because, yeah, I'm just not seeing, the massive Subwoofer Norway 2023 Eurovision cohort. But maybe I'm just not seeing that on my pocket of the internet. All right. Well, we've made it to our top 3 overhyped entries for Eurovision 2022. Before we get to that, hey, if you've never been to my channel before, welcome. If you're loving this conversation and you want to get in on it, well, you're going to have to like this video. And you're going to have to subscribe, because I've got so much more content coming. And you too could be featured in one of these videos if you follow me on Twitter, answer my questions, and subscribe so you can get in on the conversation. Well, in third position, with a whopping 30 plus mentions, and that's not even accounting for the people who are replying to and saying, I agree, and liking the statuses of, people throwing this country out there. It's Poland. And I wouldn't say that I'm surprised to see Poland here, mostly because there are a lot of people who are talking about a possible win for Poland this year. So anytime you hear folks really talking about a country possibly winning, you're going to hear a lot of people who are kind of like, okay, if I don't think it's going to win, I'm definitely going to say that you're overhyping it, because I definitely don't think that it could win. And yeah, I don't know if I see it for Poland winning this year. And I think it's great that the Poles have something to be proud of, because last year was rough for Poland. And then Eurovision 2020 didn't even get to happen. And then Eurovision 2019, Poland wasn't able to qualify, and technically didn't qualify because of some snafu with juror votes and stuff. So Poland actually probably should have been in the final in 2019. So, it's been a rough road for Poland. And I, for one, am happy to see Poles excited about their entry. And I think that that's so good. I think that that's so important to have the people in the country hype about what they're serving on the Eurovision stage. But yeah, Poland, it's third place, according to Twitter. Now in second place. And there was about a gap of 10 points for this. And again, this isn't accounting for people saying, oh, I agree, and people liking statuses. It's Spain, which I actually was surprised to see Spain mentioned, because let's not forget, a month ago, people were still poking holes through this entry, talking about how Chanel didn't deserve to represent Spain, talking about how Rigoberta and Tanchuguera should have been representing Spain. So I was kind of surprised to see that people are now feeling like there's this train of people who are standing Spain. Because let's just be real. A month ago, I don't know if that train was fully formed. I think that there were a lot of people who were not happy. We wanted Tangigeras. We wanted Rigoberta. But it was Chanel. And so I guess apparently people have gotten over it and they're ready to stand Chanel hard. So hard that it's number 2, according to Twitter, of the most hyped entries at Eurovision 2022. And in number 1 place, honestly, unsurprisingly, is Italy. Why is Italy in number 1 place? Well, let's be real. It's been an interesting national selection season road. It's been an interesting Eurovision season. It's been a very long, drawn-out Eurovision season. I really hope next year we just, let's just have Eurovision season start with feet. Like, can we just have Albania go first? And then we can get the songs in January, February. And could we also normalize having entries not drop, like, this week? Could we normalize, dropping your song when people are hungry for it and looking for new music? Because I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of songs that are just straight up buried at this point. People aren't really checking for them, because it's like, well, we got this other one that we like more, so everyone's just focused solely on that one and really not thinking about the other ones that hit. And if they had just dropped in a time period where there was nothing else, they might have gotten some love. But I say all this to say, there definitely, I guess, is some sense where people are like, I guess that Italy, I saw a couple of posts that were like, Italy, as per usual, overhyped. And I'm like, as per usual? Well, they won last year. So that doesn't count. You cannot say that Italy was overhyped last year. They won. The hype was real. They won. So it wasn't overhyped. It was people who genuinely liked it, and then the song won. Okay? So, we can't say that. And time will tell. But, I think that there's a lot of people this year, myself included, who were kind of waiting on some other songs to really enter that winner conversation. Because I think when Brividi dropped, and I can only speak personally, when Brividi dropped, it really did seem like that was kind of the song that most folks wanted to see represent Italy. So it wasn't like there was this huge upset that other national selections had. There are times when it's like everyone really wants to see this song win. And then if that song doesn't win, it does sort of beg the question, if that song doesn't win, then people are just sort of like, oh, well, I'm not even checking for that country anymore. Well, Italy didn't really have that. I think there were a lot of people who actually were fans of Brividi and did want to see it at Eurovision. So then when it did win, it was just like, great, I have my winner now. I've got my winner for Eurovision. This is what I wanted to see win Sanremo, and it won. And I think that would have been recreated across all of the national selections if that happened. And I think, Ronella had a lot of hype going into Feek and people really liking the song. So then when she won, people were like, well, great, I have my winner. They didn't have to really expand after the fact. So I would just say that I think Italy being deemed as overhyped, I think we will see how it does on the Eurovision stage. But if it comes top 3, I don't think that we can really say that it was overhyped. Well, what do you think? What do you think is the most overhyped entry of Eurovision 2022? Drop down and talk to me in the comments below. Do you agree with some of the countries that Twitter mentioned? Talk to me in the comments below. Do you disagree with some of these countries that Twitter mentioned? Talk to me in the comments below. This is a conversation, and you know it. I am so excited for Eurovision 2022. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe. We've got so many more conversations to be had. I'm so excited for Eurovision 2022. Bye.